All right, my name is Courtney, and this is inventory scanning training. I have Heather Stage here with me. She's the purchasing and property control specialist, and I am the director of administrative services. Inventory training is going to be mandatory this year. You cannot scan if you have not had the scanning training. So, like I said, make sure that you've dropped your name and your M number into the chat so that we can get you added into Asset Panda as a scanner when that time comes. I'm going to ask a few questions on this slide. If you want to try and drop some answers in the chat, or just kind of think about the answers out loud to yourself. Think about the answers to yourself. The next page is going to have the answers to the questions. Except for the first one, why do we have to conduct an inventory audit each year? We do this because this is something that's required by the state. We are required to scan each of our assets every year and prove that we still have them and that we know where they are. The next two questions are what's going to be on the next slide. And if you have any guesses, you can feel free, like I said, to drop them in the chat, and we can see how close you get to the correct answer. How many assets do we have college-wide? And what is the value of all of the assets college-wide? We have 18,375 scannable assets, and we have over $60 million in assets. You can look at the chart at the bottom, and it kind of tells you how many dollars in items you're going to be scanning at your campus this year. Some important dates that I wanted to go over. Friday of this week, that's March 21st, all interdepartmental transfers must be completed. If you have something that an item that you're giving to another department, you need to have that item transferred in Asset Panda and received in Asset Panda by the other department by that date. That way that we're ready for scanning on April 1st, because your permissions will be changed to where you cannot transfer or accept transfers during that time. May 31st, we will end scanning. So you're going to have from April 31st to May 31st to get your items scanned. I touched on this a little bit already. Your user permissions that you currently have, if you're able to do transfers, all of that will be taken away during the audit. You will not be able to transfer during the audit, and your normal permissions will be added back when the audit is over. If you notice any issues with your permissions once the audit is over, and like something's not quite right, you didn't get some of the things that you were able to do before, you can't do, you can reach out to Heather and she can see about fixing that for you. I also forgot to mention, if you have any questions, we're going to save those to the end, but you can put them in the chat so that we can go over them at the end of this PowerPoint. A review of the process. How do I scan items with my cell phone? We are going to email a packet of information to you after the session today. It's going to have a scribe on there that has screenshots of each step of the scanning process. It'll have a how-to on scanning. It will have a how-to on downloading your department's inventory, and it will have a how-to on on confirming that those items have been scanned. And we're also going to send this PowerPoint out to you as well. Some new things that you're going to see in Asset Panda this year. We have not always had it, but we're adding single sign-on. It's already there. If you do not see this option on the app, you're really going to need to, if you've scanned before, delete the app and then add it back, There's a toggle at the top, and you'll see this also in the instructions that are provided. There's a toggle at the top that has SSO. You're going to click SSO, and then the instructions will walk you through the steps to set up your single sign-on. And then every time you log into the app after that, it will do it with the single sign-on like what you always use at the college. There are going to be a few new fields, a few fields that you've seen before, but they're changing a little bit, so you're going to see them on there twice. They will all have required listed out beside them. All of these fields are required to be filled in. Even if we'll have the old fields for campus building and rooms, because we've had that before. You've had to fill that out and the person responsible in prior years. We will have the old fields there for you to reference, but you will still be required to fill out the new fields because there have been changes made to that reference table. But you're going to have campus, buildings, rooms, person responsible, technology class, and then recommended assets to be salvaged. Over the next couple of slides, we'll kind of break that down, break down each one of those fields and give you a better understanding of what you're filling in. For the campus building and room, like I said, there's going to be old fields, and it will have out beside it old. You will not be able to edit these. These will be for you to reference where your items have been in the past if you're not sure where to find them. But you're going to need to fill, even if you come across an item and everything looks right in the old campus building room, you're still going to need to fill out the campus building room that is new. You'll have a drop down for that, and you'll be able to fill that in. Also, you're going to notice a little bit of a difference in what the rooms are called. So like your office may be office 216. Now it may just say the number 216, Harrison Hall 216. You're going to need to make sure that you're selecting office 216 because there'll be classrooms that could be 216 or closets that could be 216. So you're going to make sure when you check from the drop down that you're selecting office 216 if it's in your office, or classroom 216 if it's in your classroom. The next field is person responsible. You've also seen this one before. This is not something that we're unfamiliar with. We've not always required it for all inventory items, but we will be requiring it for all inventory items this year. So if you're unsure as to who the person responsible should be, your supervisor, your dean of business services, you can reach out to those people and they should be able to help you with that. Most of it should be pretty clear, but there are going to be items that are in like common areas, lobbies, furniture that you're scanning in lobbies that you may not have a clear understanding of who the person responsible should be. If you come across someone who is not in there, like you go to add a person responsible on an item and the person is not in there who should be responsible, you can reach out to Heather and she will add that person into Asset Panda for you, and then you'll be able to select them from the drop down. So the technology class is only for laptops, desktops, and tablets. You won't fill it out for any other item. It's only for those laptops, desktops, and tablets. You're going to have several options from the drop down, and we're going to break that down on the next couple of slides. You'll have employee issued laptop, employee issued desktop, employee issued tablet, the student laptop checkout program, laptop carts, computer labs, classrooms, and general areas. Dr. Swanson's going to go over a little bit about what that's going to look like and what each field is going to mean, and how you can determine how you should classify those items.
Okay, so across the district, we have 7,600 laptops, desktops, and tablets. And so what we're trying to do is get a better idea and a clearer picture in terms of how the technology is being utilized. And so What I'm going to do is go over the different levels within this field, this technology classification field. And again, this is just for laptops, desktops, tablets. It's not for printers or any other technology. But you'll be asked to pretty much select one of these options when you code the laptops, desktop, or tablet. So the first option is an employee-issued laptop. So by definition, this would be a laptop that is assigned to an individual. It's not an instance where multiple employees are using this. This would be a laptop that is given just to an individual employee and asked for them to use them. Then we have the employee issued desktop, and that's like a tower. These would be in an employee office, and that would be assigned again to an actual individual employee. And it's important to point out that there's certainly instances where employees could just have maybe a tower or desktop, or they might have one laptop. But there's certainly cases where one employee might have, let's say, a laptop, a desktop, and a tablet, or they might have two laptops, a desktop, and a tablet. So Courtney mentioned like that person responsible field. So the person responsible for these employee issued laptops would be the actual employee that is assigned that technology. The third class field would be the employee issued tablet. And again, the big thing on these is it's assigned to an individual employee. You can go to the next slide. So the fourth class would be a student laptop checkout program laptop. So this is just going to be in the LRCs at Harrison County, Jackson County, and Perk. These would be, by our definition, a laptop that would be checked out for whether that be a week or several weeks, and then checked back in at the end of the term. This has to be, these units have to be physically within and managed by the LRC. The fifth class is the laptop cart. So if you have any technology laptops that are actually contained within a laptop cart, you would code that as a laptop in a laptop cart. You could have an instance where you have a laptop cart, let's say in a classroom, but for this purpose, if it is an actual cart, you would code it as being in a laptop cart. The sixth group is the classroom. So if you think about the different classrooms that you might have at your center or your campus, this could be anything from you have one desktop or tower at the front of the classroom that the faculty member is using for presentations, or this could include, you have, let's say, 30 laptops at the back of the classroom that is being used and dispersed like within the classroom. If the laptops are in a cart, code them as being in a cart. But if the laptops are not in a cart and they're in a classroom, then you would code those units as being classroom technology. And this can contain, again, laptops, desktops, or tablets. If it's physically within a classroom, code that as a classroom. We can go to the next slide. Okay, then we have computer labs, and computer labs aren't just necessarily the computer labs that we use for educational programs. This could include your computer labs at the LRC. This could include student services computer labs. Computer labs, by definition, these would be like your towers that are designated computer labs within that center or a campus. And then the last code would be general area. So we had a session 2 days ago, and a police officer asked, we've got the a tower that we use. There's about 4 of us that use this, but it's not in a classroom. It's not a computer lab, and it's not assigned to an individual employee. How do you want us to code that? And so all the other spaces that don't meet any of these prior definitions, a residence hall lobby, a general lobby, any of those that are just in a general area but are being utilized by multiple individuals, you can code under general area. So again, what we're trying to do, just kind of summarize those slides. What we're trying to do is make sense of the 7,600 computers that we currently have district-wide, so we better understand the uses of these. If you do have any questions along the way in terms of, and we've received several emails this week of, how do I code this? How would you code this? Feel free to send us an email, and we'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Swanson. The next field that you're going to see is new, recommend for salvage. This is not going to salvage your item. This is not going to move your item to surplus. This is just going to tell us if you came across a closet full of things that you haven't touched in years, you forgot you even had. You're gonna recommend those things for salvage. If it's stuff that you don't want, or stuff that you're not using, you'll recommend it for salvage. I do know that there are instances where there are things that we can't get rid of, grant funded things. You still want to recommend them for salvage so that we're aware that you want to get rid of them. Again, this is not salvaging the item. This is just letting us know that you want to salvage the item, and we'll run a report at the end of the audit, and we'll kind of go through those items, and we'll be able to tell you what items are not old enough to get rid of, the technology items that may need to go back to Dr. Swanson's area. They may want to take them back, or grant items that you can't get rid of. We can look into seeing what we can do to get rid of those things. But this is just letting us know that you have these things, you don't want these things, they're not being used, and we can kind of tell you based on that report what things you can and cannot get rid of.
And Courtney,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that is a super important field. As you all are doing the scans of over 18,000 assets in the system, if you do come across any technology that's sitting in closets that you haven't used, or maybe it's some technology we deployed a couple years ago but it's not being used, just to kind of reiterate that the importance. If y'all aren't using it, please use that flag and tell us we're not using that technology, so we can act on that information, because it does have financial implications for us if we're ordering machines that y'all aren't using. If there's 13 machines in a closet, that next year we might refresh those machines thinking that it's being used, only come find out that we're not using that technology. So that field is super important. If you're not using it, kindly flag that as a recommend for salvage. We definitely appreciate that.
There will now also be, which we did something similar in the past, where you would get a weekly, your dean of business or whoever would get a weekly report to let them know what things haven't been scanned. These are going to go a little bit more into detail this year. They're going to tell whether or not things have been scanned, but they're also going to say, okay, these things have been scanned, but they're still missing the items that we listed as required, and we need them to go back in and fill this information out. So these reports will be going to the campus VPs, and they will distribute them accordingly. But if you don't scan your items and fill in these fields that we've gone over, you will pull to this error report, and you'll be asked to go back in and fix this. Just to keep you from doing double work, it's extremely important that you get those fields filled out the first time. Some common problems that we have with scanning. I've already mentioned deleting the app and downloading the newest version of it. That's important. Make sure you have the newest version of the Asset Panda app. There's also an Asset Panda 2.0 out there. That is not it, just Asset Panda. Bad scans. If you scan something and it generates a pop-up message that says add item to the audit, you do not want to do this. This will give us bad data. We don't want to add things to the audit. If it's got a tag on there and you scan it, it should pop up as an item in Asset Panda. So you're gonna want to click remove if you see that error. If you try it again and it still doesn't scan, it could be because the tags are worn or there's something wrong with the barcode. Just reach out to Heather. Worn tags are common on items like, you know, laptops that you're carrying around and your hands are constantly touching the tags. If you have worn tags that aren't scanning, just reach out to Heather and she can print you new tags and get those on courier. Frequently asked questions. If you have an item on your list to be scanned, but you no longer have the item, it's likely that you transferred the item to another department, but never initiated the transfer within Asset Panda. So you're going to need to reach out to whoever you transferred it to, whatever the department was you transferred it to, have them scan the item, and then you can initiate that transfer after the audit has closed. If you scan all your items, but it's still showing them as unscanned, whenever you go into the Asset Panda app and you click to start scanning, you can pull up the scanner under assets and start scanning stuff, and you can change fields and all of that under assets. If you do that, you're going to scan, you know, 500 items in your area that you had to scan and change just to be pulled to the error report as somebody that didn't scan their items. And you're going to have to go back in and rescan them. We don't want you to have to do that. You want to make sure that you go into that, when you go into the app, you select tools from the drop down and make sure that you're selecting the FY25 audit. We don't want you to have to do double work, and I'm sure that you would be very angry if you have tons of things to scan and then you have to go back in and scan again. How do you know which departments to scan? Your administrative dean or your dean of business services, your supervisor, whoever designated you to scan items should be able to tell you what departments you should be scanning. Important things to remember. The audit is live, and what this means is that as you're scanning, Heather is adding items into Asset Panda that you've purchased and have come in. So you want to keep that on your brain. If you go in April 1st and you know, hurry on through, get all your stuff done because you want to get it out of the way. Just remember that if you've ordered anything that is going to go onto, that has to be inventory, that is going to go into Asset Panda, those items do still have to be scanned. We did get the question of, you know, if you receive your item after the audit is closed, then what? You don't have to scan the item once the audit is closed. If the audit closes and then you receive an item, you know, the next day, that item won't have to be scanned until next year. But everything that is added into Asset Panda during the audit has to be scanned. Inability to add data. So I've already kind of touched on this with the person responsible. If you come across a person responsible, a campus building room, anything that's not in there, you know, you select your campus, you select the building, and you go to put the room in, and that room number is not in there. You can reach out to Heather and she can add that information. We've tried to do our due diligence and ensure that all of that information is put in there and put in there correctly, but it is possible that that there are some that have been missed. And then finally, closing the audit. Never, ever, ever click finish audit. We don't want to close the audit out. If you close the audit out, we run the risk of having to scan items again. So, for example, one year we had the audit was 75% finished. An employee went in, scanned all their items, clicked finish audit, and closed the audit out. And then we were at risk for 75% of those 75% of those items that we had already scanned having to be rescanned. And if you are the person that closes the audit, everybody else is going to be very unhappy with you if they have to rescan. So make sure that you're not clicking finish audit. And this is my last slide for you today. Missing inventory items. If you have gone through your list looking for something and you cannot find it, check again. And then after you've checked again, check again. You want to check everywhere that you can possibly think of that this item would be, because the next step is to file a police report on the missing item, and then we'll report the item on the property salvage report as lost. And once those items are on there, it is a pain to pull them back off once you when you find it, 2 years from now, because you've reported it missing. We have to go through a lot of steps to get that back on inventory. So if you are missing something, please make sure that you're checking and double checking before you initiate the police report. That is all that I have. Dr. Swanson, did you have anything you needed to add on the end of this?
Yeah, just add, one of the questions I've gotten this week is who the person responsible for like computer labs would be. And so our response has been, it would be the employee that is intimately familiar with the software requirements of that lab. So if we were to refresh the technology in that lab next year, this would be the individual we could reach out to and ask what software is required, and that would be our primary point of contact. So in some cases, that will be a faculty member. In some cases, that might be a chair. It all depends based off the individual lab. But if you can just make sure that person responsible for the technology, that we code those correctly, again, that will help us out when it comes time for refresh.
Okay, good deal. I'm scrolling through to try and see about answering questions. Let me look and see what we've got in here. Terry Sasser, do you use a person's name or a position number? It's going to be the person's name. So in Asset Panda, every person is associated with their position. So if you put my name as the person responsible, when we pull the report, it'll have that I'm the Director of Administrative Services. So you're going to just select their name from the drop down. Let's see. Will the person scanning also receive the error report? You will not receive the error report. Someone, I am not sure if it will be your VP, your supervisor, the Dean of Business Services. I'm not sure what that is going to look like, but someone from your campus will contact you if you've pulled to the error report. Do we have some sort of resource person who is responsible for this program at the Bryant Center? What is the program, Brittany? You can reach out to me via email, and we can try to help you on that. Are there going to be more meetings? Yes, we will be at AMTC in Harrison County tomorrow. I believe Harrison County is 10, AMTC is 2. So if you know anybody that's missed sessions and needs to come, we will be there. How do we classify a laptop that isn't loaned out to students for a semester, but is loaned out to students for a semester, but is kept in a laptop cart when not issued to anyone? Also, how do we count laptops that are currently loaned out to students? Dr. Swanson, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, Courtney, would you mind doing a share screen with those slides with the codes or the different classes?
Yeah, hold on just a second.
Right there.
The second one? Okay.
Yeah, this first blog, that first slide right there, that's just employee issued. Again, the take home is the person responsible, but would be the person that would be assigned that technology. For these groups, the ones that are checked out that are only managed by the LRC, that should only be applicable to LRC. So the question is, if there's laptops being checked out to students, but they're not being checked out through the LRC, if those laptops are in a laptop cart, then coded as a laptop cart. So there's some applications that we're aware of that students are there. We're checking out laptops. It's not managed through the LRC, but they're in laptop carts, and that can be at various locations. That might be in a classroom or outside of a classroom. It could be an office. But for that application, if it's in a cart, coded as a laptop cart. If the laptops are being, let's say, checked out, but they aren't in a cart, let's say they're in the back of a classroom, then you would code that technology as being in a classroom.
Thank you, Dr. Swanson. The second part of that question, also, how do we count laptops that are currently loaned out to students? The audit goes through May 31st. Can you answer whether or not the students will have returned the laptops by then? I would think that classes would be out and they should have returned them, or are they out of a classroom, I guess is my question.
Yeah, that's correct. I think in prior years, particularly those units that are managed through the LRC, I think the expectation is that by the end of the term that they're turning those in. So there might be some units right now that are checked out, but by the end of the term, those should be turned back into by the students. So by the time the audit ends, we should have those physically in our possession.
Okay. And he said we do use the library system to check the laptop out on the student's account from the Bryant Center. They should have returned them by the end of the audit. I do not, the last question, are there any online sessions? I do not currently have any scheduled. I'm looking at some options for people who may not have been able to make it during this week of training. Once we have done some concrete decision making on that, then I'll make sure that the information gets out to everyone so that they can get signed up. All right. If nobody else has any questions, that's all that I have for you today. If you have any questions or concerns or things that you think of after you've hopped off the session, feel free to email or call me and Heather, and we will be happy to help in any way that we can. Y'all have a good day. Allison, I just saw your question. You will have in the instruction packet that I'm sending out, there are instructions on how to get logged into Asset Panda. And if you have any issues doing that, just reach out to us and we'll get you set up. And yes, the PowerPoint and the scribe will be sent to your emails.